HQ. We are here once again on this deadline day with 4 hours to go until the transfer window closes at 11 p.m. here in the UK. I hope you're all well wherever you're watching around the world. It is a busy day, and we often say it, and it's just to try and sort of heat things up, but there genuinely are a lot of twists and turns happening with 4 hours to go of this transfer window. We're going to be hearing from David Ornstein a little bit later on in the show. We're going to be hearing from Roshane on West Ham. We're going to be hearing from Dermot on the situation at Barcelona. We're going to have Jay in the studio, Jay Harris on Christian Eriksen. And also we're going to be joined in the studio by Premier League Dr. Matthew Ogunsanya, just to give us an insight into what it is like doing medicals on a deadline day, which is always a key part of the day. How do they get it all done when the clock is ticking? So we will be joined by Matthew in the studio. We will also be talking to Chris Woff about the situation at Newcastle, because there has been a bit of a twist involving Dele Alli, which we've revealed on The Athletic over the past few moments. And you can pick up that news on the current transfer news live updates, which is available on The Athletic. If you're not a subscriber yet and you're checking in with The Athletic for the very first time, head on to theathletic.com/deadline day, and you can pick up a 50% discount on a new subscription now. If you're wondering what's going on, check it out. And then you can find out exactly what's going on this deadline day via our dedicated reporters that cover our teams 365 days of the year. They don't just jump in onto a club for 1 day of the year or 2 days of the year for these transfer windows. They are with their clubs all the way through. Let's start with one of those reporters. And it's been a busy day for Paddy Boyland, who hasn't just had a new manager to deal with. He's also had a new player, which has been announced in the last few moments, Paddy. And it is a done deal, because Donny van der Beek is now an Everton player. We saw it coming, but it's good news that it is now done and dusted.
Yeah, absolutely. We were talking earlier, obviously, about Everton's need to strengthen the midfield. I think that was something that they were looking at the start of the month, kind of a preoccupation for the former manager, Rafa Benitez. But it's obviously accelerated because of the injuries to Doucouré and Fabian Delph, who were both set to be out for a month or so minimum. So Donny van der Beek on a temporary deal is good news. Takes up their full loan quota domestically. So they've already got Anwar El Ghazi. So Everton will now have to be a little bit more imaginative with future deals. They'll need to look for the remainder of the window, at least in different markets or for permanent deals. That has a knock-on effect, but I think it's a good move for Everton. They've got more midfield depth in. And I also feel as though Van der Beek is a player that should complement Lampard's system well. Lampard will want Everton to play more proactive, front foot football, emphasis on pressing, keeping hold of the ball. Van der Beek schooled at Ajax, I think, kind of fits into that mould pretty well. So all things considered, a decent temporary addition for Everton.
We'll get the take of Chris Woff on this Dele Alli situation in a moment. But what's your understanding as far as Dele Alli's movements? And obviously what you've just said there about Donny van der Beek taking out the last loan place and things like that, having to be creative with moves. Dele Alli, it appeared, was on the verge of signing for Everton, but we now understand that he might be heading towards Newcastle on their trolley dash. So what do you understand?
Yeah, so the Newcastle development was a bit of a surprise, admittedly. I think from our point of view, the Dele Alli deal was progressing well with Everton. Two clubs have been talking throughout the day, and he was identified as another player that Lampard in particular would like to sign. Actually, the interest goes back a little bit further than that, and anybody that subscribes to The Athletic will know we've been reporting over the last month or so that Everton have been monitoring him. The board of Everton have been monitoring him in the absence of a kind of a recruitment structure at Everton. But for all intents and purposes, this was progressing well. The two clubs were close to agreeing a deal for Dele Alli. And I think joining Everton was something Dele Alli was kind of on board with, having kind of heard about Lampard's interest in him and everything there. So a little bit of a surprise, but let's see how it turns out. I suppose Everton's trump card at this point in time is that they'd be willing to take Dele on a permanent deal, whereas Newcastle's offer currently is a loan. So let's wait and see if that swings it in Everton's favour.
Yeah, we'll see. And then, lest we forget, there has also been just a small matter of a new era starting today at Everton in terms of Frank Lampard being announced as the new manager. You don't want to sort of get too worried about the playing staff almost, and who's going to be playing for the club, because effectively this is the biggest move of deadline day, finally nailing down who the manager is going to be.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's been a while in the offing. I suppose media organisations like ourselves have expected this to happen now for a number of days. It was almost as though Lampard was ordained on Friday in meetings with the board, and obviously
I think he was ordained when Vitor Pereira went on Sky Sports News. That seemed to be the deal breaker.
I think you could well make a link between those two events. Yeah, a very bizarre week, to be honest, covering Everton Football Club. Not the first bizarre week we've had, in truth. But yeah, Lampard emerged as the strong favourite back end of the week. They got it over the line today, and he was announced there. So that was really positive. I've sensed a shift in the mood levels among supporters. Gone from being pretty downtrodden towards the end of Benitez's time to looking forward to a new regime and a new era with fresh optimism under Lampard. Lampard was actually at Finch Farm today, Everton's training ground, and took a session with the players. He's been joined by Paul Clement, Joe Edwards from Chelsea. So a manager and a coaching staff held in high regard across the game. And Duncan Ferguson, the Everton legend, is staying too. So overall, when you put it in with Donny van der Beek signing, I think it's been a good day for Everton. It's progress in the right direction. Let's see what they can do between now and the close of the window. Yeah,
absolutely. And you'll keep us posted on that. We may well see you in our show at 10:30 as we build up to that 11 o'clock deadline. Paddy, thank you very much indeed. Nice. We will see you later on. So let's get a little bit more on that story regarding Dele Alli then, and some other signings which are on the agenda for Newcastle. With Chris Woff, our dedicated Newcastle reporter, as you can see. So this came on deadline day. This came as a little bit of a surprise, because it looked as if Dele Alli was nailed on to go to Everton. What's your understanding as far as what's going on now with Dele Alli heading to Newcastle?
Well, Dele Alli has been a player who's been put to Newcastle several times this month by his agency, which is the same agency as the one that Kieran Trippier and Chris Wood, who've signed for Newcastle this month, are represented by. And basically, my understanding was that Eddie Howe's preference was for Jesse Lingard. And obviously today, this morning, Newcastle, as of last night, put in a new increased bid for Hugo Ekitike, who's the young forward at Rams. That hasn't paid off. The Rams have just released a statement saying he will stay there, as we reported earlier on today. So Newcastle then shifted back to Jesse Lingard, who'd been a priority target for a few weeks earlier, tried to negotiate with Manchester United, who wanted a significant loan fee and then also a survival bonus if Newcastle avoided relegation, and basically they couldn't come to an agreement on that. And so David Ornstein, our colleague, is reporting that Newcastle are now moving for Dele Alli. It's interesting because we've had information from senior sources at the club today on two occasions, both before they went for Lingard and then they went for Alli, that's their business done. But Newcastle are still open to if proposals are floated their way. So they're exploring this Dele Alli. I still think it's late, and I think that they're probably. It looks at this stage like they might fall short with it, but Eddie Howe ideally wants another attacker, because Newcastle need to score and create more goals than they are at the moment, as well as keeping them out of the back.
So, is there any other irons in the fire? If obviously you've explained perfectly that the link, from Lingard, that got turned down. The previous link with France. And now looking for Dele Alli. Is there anyone that's more of a traditional attacker that is on the list that could be moved on to if Dele Alli doesn't work?
There's been a report in the last hour or so saying Duvan Zapata at Atalanta, the striker, is someone Newcastle could look to. Now, my understanding is he is someone who has been on the list for a long while. Steve Nixon, the head of recruitment, likes him, but the issue is that he would have to come in from Italy, and it's a very complex deal to do at this late stage of the window, given the complications that have come post-Brexit. So I think that's unlikely. I think Newcastle are running out of options. They will, I think, stay interested in anyone who may be presented to them between now and the end of the window if a club in England comes out and says you can have X, Y, or Z as a player. But what I think they're finding is that we heard a few months ago that some clubs just weren't going to deal with Newcastle. And I think that they're finding that at the moment as well, that domestically clubs don't necessarily want to loan to Newcastle, whether that's because they'd like to see them relegated because they're one of the direct relegation rivals, or because they see them as a threat going forward, or because they don't agree with the takeover being made. So I think at this stage, it's looking unlikely that they'll get that attacker. They've obviously already confirmed Matt Targett on a loan deal until the summer from Aston Villa, the left back. That does not include an option to buy, is our understanding, but they will also confirm Dan Burn as a centre back, and I think that will be their business done at 5 signings. I think it's looking unlikely now they can get an attacker unless they can hijack this Dele Alli deal.
And the Dan Burn one hasn't, correct me if I'm wrong, it hasn't actually been fully announced yet. Obviously, we know that it is happening. That there's no sort of last minute hiccups in that. It's just a matter of the social teams getting their fancy videos ready, is it?
Yeah, that one, my understanding is will happen. So Newcastle will finally have a centre-back. They haven't signed a senior centre-back since August 2018. So they will finally have strengthened that area of the team. That was the priority throughout the window. It looks like it's going to be their final signing of the window, is to finally get the left-sided centre-back that they've wanted. Okay,
Chris, we will let you crack on and chase this Dele Alli story. We are going to be speaking to David Ornstein a little bit later on as well. We can now get the latest on West Ham, and Roshane Thomas is he's now here in the studio, which is great to see. Before I come to Roshane, just very, very quickly, that's all right. Take a seat. In terms of a couple of questions that we're getting in on Watford at the moment, and obviously a lot of questions in because I cover Watford for The Athletic. There is quite a lot of rumours going online at the moment regarding the Manchester United goalkeeper Dean Henderson potentially heading to the club. He's been linked with a lot of clubs throughout this transfer window, wants to get games, doesn't feel like he's getting the opportunities at Manchester United. We are looking into that, but it does obviously depend on what is going on in the current goalkeeper situation at Watford. They have Daniel Bachmann, who I understand it isn't going anywhere in this window as it stands. That may well change if someone else was to come in, but my understanding is he wants to stick with it, see how he goes, and then see what happens in the summer. Ben Foster will obviously be leaving in the summer unless he has an extension and tears it up for the rest of this season. And they also have Maduka Okoye, who's the Nigeria international goalkeeper, who will be joining in the summer as well. There are other goalkeepers there as well, Rob Elliott. There's also Vincent Angelini as well. So they have a logjam of goalkeepers at the moment. So it would be a bit of a surprise if that one does happen. However, knowing how important playing football is for Dean Henderson at the moment, maybe an opportunity has presented itself. We've seen with another deal today, for example, with Nat Phillips, who was linked with a £15 million move away from Liverpool. There weren't any takers, and he's ended up going to Bournemouth on loan today. That was confirmed earlier on. So stranger things have happened on deadline day, and it is one to keep an eye on. And I thank you for all the questions on social media and on YouTube. If you're watching Facebook, Twitter, and stop coming around my house and asking me about Dean Henderson. I'm only joking. Right. So let's speak to Roshane. I've delayed you there. I do apologize. No. So, I'm talking about potentially a goalkeeper going into Watford that isn't necessarily needed. Something that is desperately needed at West Ham as a striker. Where is he?
I know. I should be filing a complaint to my colleague because he didn't give me tissue before I sat down. Because I could have crying. But yeah, as you touched on, none of a striker. We've been told that it's very unlikely West Ham will sign on between now and the PM deadline. Right now, a lot of West Ham fans are going crazy on social media. I think it's a missed opportunity. Bearing in mind, West Ham are 5th right now. Great chance for the club to build on the full good factor on the Moyes. Hopefully, go on a cup run, Europa League and FA Cup. But now, all element of positivity has been just out the window right now. With non-arrival striker or any player on that attack. So, yeah, it's a concern because the squad right now is so thin. And we saw it in the last game against Man United where we brought up so many players off the bench, could change the game. Moyes only brought on Fredericks. So that tells you, the lack of options he has in the attacking area. So it's a worry for West Ham moving forward.
What have they been trying to do, and why have they fallen down effectively?
So we've been linked to a number of players, most of attacking players. So, for example, Ben Brees and Diaz, the Blackburn Rovers striker. They were linked to Jonathan David, the Lille forward. They were linked to Valentine Kalasinos, the New York City forward as well. And they tried to get a deal done for Darwin Núñez, the Benfica forward. He's probably one of the most promising young forwards in Europe right now. Scored 20 league goals for Benfica. But as our colleague David Ornstein was on this morning in his column, he turned on a move to West Ham. Do right now. So, yeah, it's been a bad day for West Ham. It really has been. And one could argue that that's what happens when you leave it so late to get business done. Because we've seen over the past 2 years, also in January, West Ham wait until the last few days before the window closes to get their business done, and it just hasn't worked out this year.
So what does it mean? Say, rest of this afternoon, this evening, it's this evening, isn't it? Less than 4 hours to go. If nothing happens, how does that genuinely impact the proposition of West Ham, fighting on, still in the FA Cup? Still in the Europa League? Premier League?
Yeah.
How will David Moyes actually be able to spin those plates? Has he got some tricks up his sleeve? Is there a different way of playing? Is Jarrod Bowen going to be playing more centrally if Mikel Antonio's not there? I mean, what do you see as the solution to this situation if there is no striker brought in to help?
Moyes has done a tremendous job. A number of miracles he pulled off, on honesty, because there's been times when Antonio's been injured and he played Jarrod Bowen up front. But right now, one could argue Bowen, Antonio right off an injury, that season's finished. That's how it's looking right now for West Ham, just due to the lack of strength and depth from the squad. I was alongside you for the emphatic 4-1 against Watford, and the fans were just. And I say for
then what are you bringing that up for?
I know, but fans were so happy on returning back to London.
Yeah.
Say we're going to finish in the top 4, and now the other teams around West Ham having games in hand, it's not looking possible right now. One could argue West Ham could probably finish 8th or 7th, just due to how things are looking at the minute. So it's not looking promising, unfortunately.
It's purely a coincidence, but that's your lot. Okay, having brought up Watford, it is a coincidence. But look, Roshane, thank you very much indeed. You never know. There's 3 hours to go, 3 hours and a bit. Something might happen.
If I sign someone, I'll be doing backflips. So
we'll get them on air. We'll do it on air. Brilliant, Roshane. Thank you very much indeed. Just to keep you posted, we are going to be speaking to David Ornstein, who's off taking calls at the moment. He's got fingers in more pies than a baker. And we will be catching up with him on this update. We've also got Matthew Ogunsanya, our Premier League doctor, vastly experienced doc, to tell us all about medicals. And we'll also be speaking about Christian Eriksen as well, with Matthew, but also with Jay Harris, our Brentford reporter. One of the big deals that's been announced on this deadline day. Dermot Corrigan is joining us here on the sofa very, very shortly. But just to remind you, if you go to theathletic.com/deadline day and you're not yet an Athletic subscriber, you will be able to get a 50% discount on a new subscription. Now, our Spanish football reporter, Dermot Corrigan, has magically appeared. Hi, Dermot. How are you?
Hey, I'm pretty good. Thanks. Nice to be here.
Yeah, good to see you. We were speaking about the Ousmane Dembele situation earlier on at Barcelona. Just explain to us exactly how this is panning out as he pops up on the screen. Perfect timing. Just what's going on at the moment?
Super difficult at the minute. Barca have been trying to get rid of him. Basically, he's had a contract in the summer. They have been unable to get him to agree to a pay cut to stay at the club. They want to move him out so they can use the wages that they're paying him to bring in somebody else, whether that's Aubameyang or Morata or whoever. But he doesn't want to go. It's got very bitter, very just nasty between them, really. Barca, President Laporta, the sporting director Mateo Alemán, and Xavi have all said, "We want you gone. We want you out of here. You're not going to play again." He feels that he's been blackmailed. His agent has said he's been blackmailed. Talks have continued with the club hierarchy. PSG talks were on. There's talk of English clubs as well, and being offered around. But there's 4 hours left, or just over 4 hours left, and he's still a Barca player, and it doesn't seem as if it's going to get sorted out.
It's a really messy situation for a player that was so highly thought of, and obviously was one of the most expensive players in the world when he joined Barcelona. I mean, what you've mentioned a few things there in terms of it getting bitter, and it's almost infighting at the football club. But what's the footballing reasons why this isn't working out?
Well,
and I know he's had injuries as
yeah,
well.
he's never really fit in because it was difficult the way that he came in that summer when Neymar left.
Yeah.
He came into a team that was already really well set up. He still had the kind of core. Messi was there. Xavi was there. They still had that kind of core of the great Barcelona team, and he's never fit with those guys. He's a different character, I guess. And then he's had all those injuries. He's never really picked up the way that Barca want to play. He's had some moments, like he's still, when he's fit and when he's on his game, he's still maybe their most dangerous attacker. See how Ferran Torres does, who's just arrived now. But that means that successive Barca coaches have tried to get it to work. Especially Xavi. When Xavi came in last November, his very first press conference, his presentation, he was like, Dembele, I want him to sign a new contract. I want him to stay at the club. And I think he can be one of the best players in the world in his position, because Xavi wants guys who play, they're going to play that 4-3-3. He wants guys to go wide, to be direct, to score goals. And Dembele, when he's fit and firing, that's what he does. Unfortunately, injuries have kept, all the time have kept sending him back. And also he doesn't, even if you speak to people around the squad and other just sources around the club, there's an idea that he doesn't get how they want to play, or he's maybe too individual a player for the Barca, the collective that they want to do. So they've already got Ferran Torres, they've already brought in Adama Traore, who can both play right wing, which is Dembele's position. And they've just decided that they want to put a lot of pressure on to force him out, which even Spanish Players Agency or Players Union has looked at it. They don't think Barca are acting so well. So it's just a very bitter kind of situation.
And you mentioned that man there, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, in your first answer. It appeared as if that was almost adding to the weight against Dembele to move on. The fact that the move seemed to be happening, the fact that he was in the city as well. I mean, what was your understanding of that situation? Obviously, we heard from David Ornstein a little bit earlier on about the mechanics of why he was there and family connections and things like that. But why did that break down?
Yeah, I was surprised that he flew out because Barca have so little money, because they need something to where Dembele goes, or they do something else in order to have the money to be able to pay Aubameyang, who's on decent money at Arsenal, will be one of Barca's biggest earners, were he to join for sure. They do need a striker though. Xavi really wants a striker. He's been trying to get Morata in all through the window to try and come up with creative deals, and that's what we've been looking at as well on the side on the Athletic a good few times this month. Has just been the type of mechanics that they're trying to push through. La Liga's salary cap rules are very strict, but there's also little bits of margin that you can defer payments. You can pay people and promise to pay them more into the past. They've done deals with Umtiti, who's a defender who's out of this first team picture at the minute, but he's agreed to defer some money. With Adama, he's come in and he's not getting paid as much as he would have got paid at Wolves, in the hope maybe that things work out well for him, and then when Barca in the summer or next season, in theory, are able to pay higher wages, then that he'll benefit from that. So I was wondering whether Aubameyang might be attracted to come to Barca. Obviously at Arsenal, he needs to move on, or it's not going so well for him there. So maybe they were trying to come up with some kind of creative deal, but they've not been able to be creative enough, I think, to get it to work out. Okay,
Dermot, thank you very much indeed. Cool. We'll let you get back to your laptop and tap away. Really appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much. We are going to be speaking to Jay Harris, who broke the news regarding Christian Eriksen's signing, or the initial interest in Christian Eriksen at Brentford a couple of weeks ago now, and it has actually come to fruition today, and the deal has actually been done. We will be speaking to David Ornstein as well. Just a reminder for you, it's worth checking out the transfer news live updates on The Athletic, because it's a constant rolling news feed of updates for you on The Athletic. One other update I wanted to just give you regarding the Dean Henderson situation at Watford. It is my understanding that there has been an inquiry from Watford. However, it is also my understanding that has been a longer standing interest in the goalkeeper, especially when he became available. So it'll be interesting to see if a loan move is doable before the deadline. But as I discussed before, the Manchester United goalkeeper would be joining quite a busy goalkeeping department at Watford, and there would be quite a few moving parts. If one came in, then you would expect one to want to go out if they're not going to be playing. So we will see what happens, but we are keeping a close eye on it. Believe me, I'm keeping a close eye on it. Okay, right, let's deal with the situation at Brentford, because there has been obviously a big signing, and Christian Eriksen is a B which is probably a sentence that we wouldn't have imagined saying a year ago, let's say. But obviously there has been some significant changes in the life of Christian Eriksen. Everyone watched in horror at the Euros and saw him lying on the pitch after that cardiac arrest. And thankfully he's recovered and potentially is going to be playing football in the Premier League once again. And Jay Harris is back with us. We spoke to you this morning, and the deal, has been announced and it is now done. What's the feeling just in general, and the fact that this is now a gateway back into football for Christian Eriksen? It's the feel-good story, isn't it? Aside from we're talking about Dele and having arguments and all this sort of stuff, this is a wholesome, good moment on deadline day, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think it is potentially the story of the transfer window, just from kind of like the human element. As you said, what happened at Euro 2020 was just a horrific incident. And I think in the aftermath of that, everybody was just thankful and grateful that he'd kind of survived that ordeal. But obviously he made it quite clear in the weeks that followed that he was determined to play football again. And I think a lot of people, probably myself included, were concerned if that could actually happen and probably didn't think it would happen. But he's been determined over recent months to try and get back to a level where he can play competitively again. And obviously Brentford kind of pushed forward and have managed to complete this deal. And the director of football, Phil Giles, in the statement that announced Eriksen signing earlier this morning, was very clear in the fact that the club have done their due diligence and have undergone extensive medical checks on Christian to make sure that this is a safe deal, because that's the key thing here. It's a great story that he's back playing football again, but it needs to be done in a safe manner. And I don't think he'll be rushed into the first team. I don't think we're going to see him in the next couple of weeks. I would expect it more to the end of the month. But as you said, in the whole, it's a beautiful story that, 7 months after such a horrific incident, he's potentially going to be playing football again.
Just a reminder for you watching on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, we will be joined in a moment by Matthew Ogunsanya, who's a football medic, a doctor, and we'll get the sort of the medical take on the Christian Eriksen situation in a moment's time. But from a footballing point of view, what will he bring if he gets back to playing the football that we knew and loved watching from Christian Eriksen? What can he add to this Brentford side? And is it the missing piece to just make them function a little bit better? Because they've had a few bumps in the road of late, haven't they? Yeah,
potentially. I think people kind of forget that because of Brentford had this amazing start to the season, there have actually been quite a few, awkward bumps in the road. And recently they've gone on this run of form where they've lost 6 of their last 7. And spoiler alert, their next game is against Man City. So potentially that goes 7-8. And I know Thomas Frank will attack that game with everything. But if we're looking at the odds, they're probably going to lose that game. So looking forward, they've got a run of games at the end of the month where they're going to play Norwich, Newcastle and Burnley. And if they want to stay up, which is still, their main ambition for the season, they need to be playing a little bit better. Even the one game that they have won this year, which was against Aston Villa, they didn't play particularly well, not creating enough chances from open play. I think a player called Christian Eriksen might be able to solve that conundrum. During his time in the Premier League, I think it was 226 appearances and there were 62 assists. We know the kind of playmaker that he was. He was so central to Tottenham when, they nearly won the Champions League final under Mauricio Pochettino a couple of years ago. So I think the idea will be for him to play in Brentford central midfield 3 alongside Vitaliano and Christian Norgard. He'll play just behind Brian Mbeumo and Ivan Toney. And the idea will that he'll just be supplying those players with the killer ball that's been lacking recently.
Just want to quickly break off because I'm going to ask you another question about Christian Eriksen in a moment's time, but it concerns a former rival of Christian Eriksen in Arsenal. And we did say earlier on when we were speaking to David Ornstein about this Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang story that things could change and maybe that car turned around when he was on the way to Barcelona airport. Well, we do understand now, and the Athletic can exclusively report, and it's just dropped on our live updates on the Athletic site, on our transfer blog, that Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang has reached a verbal agreement with Barcelona, and you can follow the developing saga that is Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang and his Barcelona move on the Athletic site at the moment. And we'll get a little bit more on that from David Ornstein if he's not absolutely going crazy on the phones right now, trying to see where this story goes next. So we'll see what happens. Just a final word on that, Jay. You can understand why I had to break off and talk about that guy.
Yeah, completely understandable.
It's quite a big one. In terms of where sort of Brentford go from here, obviously it's hoped that Christian Eriksen will be able to kick on and do well. The one that interested me was extending Thomas Frank's contract. There's been changes, behind the scenes as well, in the sporting director department, all that sort of stuff. Is there still a feeling that things are heading very much in the right direction at Brentford, and that this is almost bringing in the likes of Christian Eriksen is just another step in the right direction?
Yeah, definitely. I think one thing that I said at the beginning of the season, when we are kind of comparing the other teams that got promoted and some of Brentford's rivals for avoiding relegation this season, is that Brentford have a degree of security and consistency that a lot of football clubs in general lack. Thomas Frank has been at the club since 2016, head coach since 2018. So he's so engrossed in that setup that he plays a really key role in some quite big decisions anyways. And like you said, although Rasmus Ankersen's left and moved to Southampton, Phil Giles has been director of football since, I think it's May 2016. So it's very much a case of just continuing to just operate in the way that's made them hugely successful in the Championship, with buying younger players and developing them on. We've kind of seen them attempt to do that in this transfer window with Brennan Johnson and Lewis Keane Potter, but it's not, or Keane Lewis Potter rather, but it's not quite worked out. And as you said, they've extended Thomas Frank's contract, and that shows the faith and the belief they have in him. They've also extended Pontus Jansson, the captain's contract. They've also extended Christian Norgard's contract. So there's a real emphasis that they clearly feel as if they've got through a challenging first 6 months to life in the Premier League, a big adjustment for a team that had never been at that level before. This is undoubtedly, the biggest coverage, and it's a new experience for everyone at the club, not just the players, not just Thomas Frank. And they clearly just now think, right, we can start looking ahead to next season. We feel confident enough that we're going to get to the magical. I know you're smirking. They clearly feel confident enough that they're going to, get to a second season in the Premier League. Maybe we'll be having this conversation in 4 months' time, and we'll look back on it and call it hubris. But I think there's a really good feeling around the club at the moment.
No, I'm quite happy that they're getting carried away, because there has to be some low-hanging fruit in this relegation battle. There has to be someone that just has a mare in the second half of the season for the likes of Watford, Newcastle, Burnley, Norwich to get out of the mess that they're in. But obviously Brentford have done great things, and I was talking about it earlier on, that I've been covering Brentford for years, back in the Capital Gold radio days, down in the 3rd division, 4th division, all that sort of stuff. And to see them back up in the big league, the first time in 74 years, doing great guns. And also that great story with Christian Eriksen coming to the club is a sight to behold as well. Jay, thank you very much indeed.
Absolute pleasure.
We will see what happens in the remaining 3.5 hours of this transfer window. We'll let you head off, because we did promise that we were going to bring on Matthew Ogunsanya, who is a Premier League doc. He's also famous for being the doc in the arena. If you're a YouTube fan, you will be familiar with his YouTube channel, where he pulls apart all the medical issues that you'll see in football, in sport in general. He's a big fan of American sports as well, and he has joined us in the studio. Matt, great to see you. How are you?
Good to be here. Yeah, very good. Very, very good.
Good to see you. Good to see you. So we were obviously talking there with Jay, and I wanted to start off with sort of the serious side of things. Talking to Jay about Christian Eriksen coming back, playing football again, which everyone agrees is a great story, and we're all hoping that it all goes perfectly to plan.
Indeed.
From your point of view, and you did a great video on this today, which is dropped on your YouTube channel. I've given you the doc in the arena a couple of good mentions.
Thank you.
On YouTube. Just tell us what your take on it as a doctor, as a medical professional. How complex this situation is.
Well, it's very complex, and it's very, very individualized. What I would say is, honestly, I was shocked that he's come back. I'm really, really happy. I think the easiest thing in the world would be a cardiologist saying, no, just too much. This happened. Just stay away from the game. But I really like the way that, we've got some of the best cardiologists in the world working here, sports cardiologists. And I like the fact that they've gone for like a very solutions-based approach. They've looked at the fact, okay, he's got an ICD. We know he's got an ICD in place. But what's the background to that? What is the reason why he's got it in? Is he safe to play? Is he not safe to play? Let's look at the research. And if you actually look at the research and the guidelines, actually a lot of new stuff is coming out saying actually it's a lot safer than initially maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago than we thought. So I like the fact that they're using the actual research and they're being very proactive and solutions based, and it's given this very, very talented footballer a second opportunity at a career. So yeah, I'm genuinely buzzing. I'm really, really happy for him. He's one of my favourite players in the old Football Manager days, and yeah, really, really happy.
Just for people that are watching and don't necessarily know the details that you're talking about in terms of what has been fitted to Christian Eriksen, there's obviously been a lot of writing over it, on the Athletic about his condition since those horrible scenes that we saw at the Euros. And we know that also it differs from where Aaron Ramsey's been playing recently in Serie A. The laws and the rules in terms of historical heart problems and being able to play on.
Indeed,
they have different rules to the Premier League. I mean, how does it sort of? Do you feel that the Premier League is in the right place in terms of how they view things?
It's an extremely tough call. I'm gonna obviously say yeah. He's got an ICD, so that's an implantable cardioverter defibrillator. What it basically does, it sits underneath the skin. It's got wires that go directly to the heart, and that monitors the heart essentially 24/7. If anything goes wrong with the rate or rhythm of the heart, it treats that. Sometimes gives the individual a shock. So he's got something in there to treat his condition, whatever that might be. So the question then becomes, how confident are we in that device? How confident are we that it can help him if he needs it, and other things like that? So Italy take a slightly more conservative approach with regards to ICDs, and in general, they're actually, I would say, more on the strict side in terms of a lot of their rules regarding cardiac issues in sport. And that's for various reasons. They had some quite high-profile incidents in Italy, whereas with the Premier League, they're a little bit more individual basis. So you'll have a face-to-face conversation. They'll say, okay, what's the issues with you as an individual? So I like the individualized approach, of course, and we can try and be optimistic as to it's the right choice. Yeah.
Matthew, what I'm going to do, we're going to go on and talk about medicals in football, and just trying to work out the intricacies of doing your job in a high pressure atmosphere against the clock on deadline day. David Ornstein has just bowled into the studio, and some big news has been dropping over the last few minutes or so. So if you just step aside for 2 seconds, and we'll get you back in a moment. So we've dealt with the Christian Eriksen situation. We'll come back on medicals in a moment. If you just step aside for a moment.
Of course, yeah.
And David Ornstein's going to come on in.
That's right.
Matthew's going to have a little breather. David Ornstein is coming in. It's live television, streaming, whatever we call it. Too old to know what we call it. David, so since you were last away, and as we were talking about various different issues about Dele Alli and all that sort of stuff, the Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang story dropped. We'll come on to Dele Alli in a moment. But what's going on with Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang? Because we spoke earlier on and said, oh yeah, but he might get to the airport, he might turn around, all that sort of stuff. It's what's going on?
Well, firstly, I was far more intrigued listening to Matthew's work, so I do apologise for jumping in his seat. But yes, so we've just broken the news on the Athletic that Barcelona and Arsenal have reached a verbal agreement subject to contract, so it's not done and dusted just yet, for Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang to join Barcelona on a 6-month deal that then automatically adds an extra year on when you get to the end of that 6 months. You might need a sports lawyer on to explain the intricacies of it all and exactly the practicalities on how it works. But what I'm telling you is that it's an 18-month contract for Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang to join Barcelona, which takes him to the end of his Arsenal contract. That means if this deal is completed and the medical is going to be taking place tonight, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang's Arsenal career is over.
Wowzers! So it's actually happening, and
it's actually happening as we speak.
And there is, I suppose, and there is willing on both sides, on all sides, for this to happen. Player, departing club, and buying club.
Yeah. So to be clear to everyone watching this, earlier we reported that the negotiations had basically broken down, and that was because of a discrepancy over the salary coverage that Barcelona would pay in a 6-month loan deal. They were offering what seemed to be a decent proportion, but not what Arsenal wanted. I think Arsenal wanted Aubameyang gone after what's happened in the last couple of months. And so they didn't want to be paying him. Barcelona couldn't pay all of his Arsenal salary. He's not going to want to drop some of that salary because he didn't ask to lose the captaincy and be dropped from the team, etc. So there was a standoff, and he faced going back to Arsenal. Arsenal had called him back and said, "You've got to come back to London." They insisted he was in Barcelona for family reasons. His father has an accommodation there, and it would have obviously been an easier place for him to be if this deal went through. The idea of him coming back to Arsenal was probably not great for them, given what's happened. It's probably not great for him. And so in the end, through negotiations between all the parties, they've clearly found a new solution that means they don't have to discuss a salary split. They presumably just agree a new contract. Maybe there is something for 6 months, but then Arsenal are more content on that because they know he won't be coming back on his full salary in the summer. He'll be going there. And my guess, I must stress this as a guess, is that he takes on a new salary with Barcelona from the summer. So there's a split and then a new salary, and his Arsenal career, if this goes through, is done and dusted.
Quick word on Dele Alli,
Yeah.
because that's a switcheroo that we weren't expecting. He was heading to Everton and now potentially heading to Newcastle.
No, to be clear, there's nothing to suggest that the Everton move is not going ahead. It's into its final stages. And I was very careful with my wording in our report on The Athletic that Newcastle have come in dramatically late and offered to take Dele Alli on loan to St James's Park. They have inquired about it. They've not submitted a formal bid to Tottenham. They have asked the question. And I don't know what the answer to that will be. My guess, again, is that it will be no. It's too far along in terms of medicals with Everton, in terms of contracts. He would need to do a very different contract for Newcastle because they're threatened even more so by relegation. And you talk about relegation clauses and things like that. Daniel Levy will know that he's got a permanent deal on his hands with Everton. For a player who's kind of lost his way, it could earn them some decent money if he plays a set number of games, I think the reports were. So unless Newcastle are going to offer a permanent deal as well, and Dele Alli accept that, Daniel Levy will probably go with Everton. So what we're reporting is that Newcastle have come in with interest, but we don't know the outcome. And if I was a betting man, I would say he'll end up at Everton.
I would also bet that Newcastle could probably just pop a couple of zeros on anything that's being offered. And if that is the motivation, then maybe. But maybe working with Frank Lampard and in a better, maybe more secure environment.
Yeah,
who knows? We will see.
Yeah.
I'll let you crack on.
Thank you.
David, thank you very much for joining us once again. Right, Matthew, that's perfect timing because David has been talking about having to get these deals done, late medicals. It is a very, very time-sensitive situation being a doctor at a Premier League club on deadline day. And you can explain to us, in you come, background. You see, it's all drama. I wonder if it's more dramatic being in the studio than doing a medical on deadline day. I would imagine the pressure is more on you. So just explain to us the situation. You've got a deal that is happening at a decent time. So you get a heads up the night before, let's say.
Yeah.
That's plenty of time to get a medical done, isn't it? Just explain the process.
Yeah, well, yeah, you're completely right. Basically, so it kind of depends. So as you said, normally, to be fair, maybe the night before deadline day, you'll get a heads up saying, this player we want to do a medical for. They're going to be arriving in London at X time, so make it happen, basically, okay? The key part of deadline day is organization. You've just got to be extremely, extremely organized. So a lot of things go on. You need to make sure the clinics have got the heads up. The specialists that you will probably be talking to have got the heads up. And normally they're all really, really experienced, okay? So the moment we get the green light, basically, this player, so-and-so, you call your rep at the clinic, whatever, and everything kind of set up in place. So that's loads of time. If we get night before, normally we can get things done. It's on the day or when there's multiple transfers when things start to get a little bit hairy.
And it's interesting you say about notifying the clinics and stuff like this. Part of the deadline day football parlance that reporters like me stood outside training grounds will say, and we'll report on it in print and things like that. Okay, it's a two-part medical. It's a two-part medical. Just explain how many moving parts these medicals actually have, because it's not as simple as he just does his away day stuff when he's in the clinics and then just comes to the training ground, or is it?
No, I would say there's probably about 4 different parts, really. The most important part is what I would actually describe as just due diligence.
Yeah.
So the quicker we get the name of the player, the better, because the most important part of deciding what the risk for this player is often actually looking at the individual's past. So, for example, if you've got a player and they give the name of the player, you do your due diligence using various different sources, and you look at the key thing is availability. How available have they been over? I used to go over the last 3 years, and my magic number was about 80%. So they're available for 80% of games, even if they haven't played, but on the bench or just physically available. If they are available in the past, it's very difficult as a doctor to say to the club in the future, this player probably won't be able to play. So that's probably 80% of it, really. And then from there we go on. So after the due diligence, which can take quite a while, then it's all the medical stuff. Firstly, what you see on the day, taking the history from the player, your medical history, injury history, important injuries, and physical examination. Because sometimes, even on the physical examination, you find surprises. You find surgical scars you didn't, that's not on the history, that's not on the internet. You find surgical scars you don't know. You realise actually they're injured right there, right then. They got swollen knees, they got swollen ankles, they got a bendy back, they got all sorts of things. So the history and examination is really important. Then all the technical stuff, which is the specialist tests, MRIs, and obviously the cardiac scans, which is massively important. So to do a full medical, I would say it's about 6-7 hours work. And that's assuming you don't actually find anything wrong.
So in a situation, and this is hypothetical.
Yeah.
Now a button is pressed on a deal. Let's say for sake of argument, Dele Alli, right? He was going to Everton. They had all this stuff sorted and it was all planned.
Yeah.
Newcastle go, right, we're going to try and hijack the deal. You've got 5. My maths is so terrible. I'm frazzled. 3 hours, 13 minutes until 11 o'clock. That's not possible, is it? To get the medical that ideally you would like done,
no.
Or is it more likely that you have deals that are done so late that people go, yeah, we're only doing this because we know them. So you wouldn't sign a risky player at this stage on deadline day.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that because the club is focusing on what's going on the pitch. So they want this player. It's up to us to just figure out. We just need to get it done. In that situation, as I said, the main things are due diligence. So as long as you've got some of the details of the player, I can at least put together a provisional report. On top of that, if the time's short like now, what we would say is probably both clubs want to get the job done, get the deal done. So you can actually go maybe to the doctor of the other team and say, okay, what are the latest scans have you got for the player? What's the latest medical details you've got? The latest cardiac screens, X, Y, and Z, and you can probably get together a condensed provisional risk assessment for the player that you present to the club. They need that information from a medical point of view really quickly. Not necessarily, I know traditionally we think, oh, he's passed the medical, he's failed the medical, but there's a lot of nuance to it. So as you said, they'll be negotiating and they might be thinking, okay, a 3-year contract versus a 5-year contract versus a 2-year contract versus a 6-month contract. If the medical comes back and we say, listen, this player, okay, he's been in and out of the squad, so he hasn't actually played that much. The MRI shows that he's got something in the knee or in the ankle, just for example, that isn't likely to heal and might cause issues over the next 3-4 years. That might change the thinking of the club. That might change the negotiation tactics of the club, X, Y, and Z.
So rather than a failed medical, it might be, okay, we found something. We want this deal to get done. Can we have an option with a loan with an option to buy or something like that? So you've got a bit of a check and watch situation.
Exactly, because we really want to, the club really want to know is, okay, how long can this player play? in terms of years. How often can they play and to what level? So the needs of a Liverpool might be different from the needs of a Burnley. Burnley have 1 week between games, completely different style of play, X, Y, and Z. Liverpool, you're going to be playing 60 games a year for the next 5 years, if you're a key player for that. So the profile of player is going to be completely different, what they need. So that's the type of information that's important to the club. Not to pass or fail someone. I was given advice early on in my career: don't just pass or fail someone, because you never know. You never know. They might go to another club and do just fine, or you might give someone the green light, and then you're just talking about Dele, young guy, fit guy, and then just get unlucky. So that's kind of how it works. The way I reason it, the club deals with what they think the benefit of the player will be to the club, and then we kind of give the risk aspect, and then the club make the risk benefit analysis. In terms of
Final quick point.
Go on.
Do you enjoy it?
Oh.
Do you get a buzz out?
Yeah.
You see me getting all excited here about deadline day and all this sort of stuff. It's the most excited I've been all year. Do you get excited, or do you get really nervous?
No, deadline day is really good. You feel like really useful, Like you
get asked big questions.
Yeah, people. All of a sudden, the chairman knows your name. It's nice. It's nice. Like it's good, and you're organised, and you feel like you're behind the curtain. I know it's a normal day in the office for you guys, but you feel a bit like you're on the ball. Yeah, it's good. It's good. I like deadline day a lot.
And briefly, just a word about your YouTube channel, Doc in the Arena.
Indeed.
What people can see when they're seeing you online. What are you explaining to them?
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. So my YouTube channel, the main thing is I just want to give people an insight into the medical aspects of sport, because these are some of the most unique humans on earth on an individual level, and the things they do physically are incredible. And actually, the medical side of it, obviously, I would say it is significant, is really important. Their physical capabilities and the demands they go through. So, in terms of just injuries, in terms of how we approach situations from a medical point of view, I think it's a worthwhile angle to approach it from. So I'll just try and give a little bit of that.
Perfect. Matthew, it's been a pleasure seeing you, speaking with you, and also check out on The Athletic as well. If you search the name Matthew Ogunsanya, you'll be able to read about his story as well. We did a piece back in October, Black History Month, didn't we?
So yeah, that was good.
That was a really good opportunity for you to sort of outline your story as well. Matthew, thank you very much for coming on. If you want to head off set, I think we're all done for guests on this latest update here on the Athletic UK Deadline Day special. It has been a busy one. We've had breaking news with Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang looking now as if he's heading towards Barcelona once again. We've had that little spanner in the works for Everton potentially with Dele Alli maybe heading to Newcastle, and there has been many more twists as well. And we have just over 3 hours to go until the transfer window ends here in the UK, and we have one more show to go, which will start at 10:30 and go all the way through the deadline. We'll be back with the likes of David Ornstein, Chris Woff at Newcastle, and all our dedicated reporters. As I mentioned before, and we've seen a few of them here today, on The Athletic, obviously dedicated reporters all year round covering your team in the Premier League and beyond. We had Dermot on talking about Spanish football, also Italian football. Where else do we go? Germany as well, all the big leagues in Europe and the EFL as well. There's been some fascinating deals done, especially at Bournemouth on this deadline day. They've been bringing in some big players that will hopefully for them help their promotion push. Some big deals as well at Nottingham Forest too. I'm interested by the Sam Surridge deal, signing for £2 million from Stoke. Just a reminder as well, if you want to join in on The Athletic, head to theathletic.com/deadline day, and you'll be able to pick up a 50% discount on a new subscription. But that's all for now, and we will see you on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook at 10:30.